Hello, everyone coming in. Thank you for joining us for this professional use session. I'm going to hold off just a moment so then we can get some of our attendees filed in and get our last panelist to join us. If you can hear me speaking, if you could indicate by raising your hand, that would be wonderful help. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it looks like we've gotten pretty much everybody in. So Mark, before I hand it over to you, and here we have Erika. I'm just going to do a couple of announcements. First of all, thank you all for joining us today for our professional use session. My name is Brooke Hammond. I'm the Employer Relations Coordinator with the Career Success Center at UNF. This event is one of many events offered by the Career Success Center designed to assist students with preparing for their future careers. Throughout this entire week, we'll have numerous sessions covering a variety of career-related topics. To view the sessions that will be offered throughout the week, please visit our website, of which I've provided in the chat box for you. Following this week's Professional U event, the Career Success Center, in conjunction with our Business School's Career Management Center, will be hosting the virtual Osprey Career Fair on Tuesday, October 6th from 3 to 6 p.m. via the Handshake Career Portal. We'll also be hosting the virtual Diversity Mixer, which will be held the night prior to the fair on October 5th from 7 to 8, also via the Handshake Career Portal. For this session, we'll be moderating both the Q&A and the chat boxes for any questions that you may have for our guest speakers. These questions will be addressed throughout the presentation. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers, Mark Pullam, University Talent Lead for Southwest, and Erika Lewis, University Talent Lead for Southeast at Fidelity Investments, who will be discussing tips and strategies on activating your transferable skills. Thank you so much.
All right, well, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Very happy to be with you virtually. Not as good as being in the great city of Jacksonville, Florida, but I'm sure at some point we will be able to get back to the area and experience the humidity and the heat and the beautiful campus of University of North Florida. I want to also welcome and introduce to everyone my colleague, Erika Lewis, who is going to be the lead contact for Fidelity Investments for that area going forward. So we're very happy to have her join. She's been here for about 6 or 7 weeks now. And one of the best things about our partnership, us being able to work together along with Brooke, is the fact that both Erika and I, prior to coming to Fidelity, worked in the capacity of the Career Center at campuses. So I was at the University of North Texas, and Erika came from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So we are very invested, excuse me, very passionate, very dedicated to sharing information that will help you as students to start that first professional career job. And so today we're tasked with giving you some information about activating your transferable skills. So let me share my screen. And hopefully everyone can see this. And what we like to do is we like to make this very interactive from the start. So we don't want to wait till the end to answer questions. We want to do that from the very start. So as we start to go through the content, please use your Q&A box or your chat box so Brooke can see it and she can, excuse me, give us those questions. And let's kind of talk through this, because this subject is very important to professional development. It's very important to your maturation process, whether we're talking about interviewing skills, whether we're talking about networking, whether we're talking about starting that first professional job, how to comport yourself on that job, how to get ahead. So hopefully these things will be great tips for you and that you can ask a lot of questions. Erika, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself before we get started?
Absolutely. As Mark and as Brooke said, my name is Erika Lewis, and I actually will be supporting the Florida market So very excited for that. And as Mark said, where you are at this point in your career, a lot of times I've worked with students, and when they see job descriptions or they think about different types of opportunities, they're like, well, I've never done it before, or I don't have, that particular skill, or this job description just doesn't align with the experiences that I have. And what I've always shared with students is that transferable skills, quite honestly, is what companies are looking for. If they are interested in you and they want to talk to you, they realize you've never worked at Fidelity before. They realize you've never done these roles before. So they're not expecting you to come in and run the business per se. But what they do want to know is, have you done something? You talk about, let's say, leadership or problem solving. Tell me examples of when you have led a team in whatever capacity in which you led it, because the belief is if you've been able to do it other places, then you'll bring those skills to be able to do it here in a different kind of environment. So super excited to be here partnering with Mark today to talk about activating your transferable skills and how they are going to help to make you marketable and ideally identify the type of opportunities you're looking for going forward. So excited. And as Mark said, I'll also kind of be watching the Q&A. And so we look forward to answering any questions that you may have. That's what we're here for. So there are no dumb questions. So ask it. I tell students now, be loud and potentially wrong in this kind of environment. So when you get in front of recruiters, you're ready to go. So thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so let's jump right in. And so I start with the question, and of course we want to keep this top of mind. And we always want to start with, why are transferable skills important? And then over to the side, you'll see, said, are they relevant in interviewing, training, job performance, advancement? Yes, to all of these things. Transferable skills are relevant in every aspect of what you will experience, not only while you're in school as an undergrad, but also as you start to look at the process of potential organizations that you want to work for. And then once you get inside of the organization, you see job performance, advancement. Those are the things that you want to really focus in on and recognize what you'll always hear questions in an interview, what's your strength and weakness? Excuse me, I'm sorry. That really pertains to your transferable skills. It pertains to you as a professional, knowing where you are in the maturation process of getting to a level where you are an SME, which is an acronym for subject matter expert, right? That's what we're all striving to attain when we get into a position. And once we get to that level, that's when we know that we're ready to spread our wings and perhaps venture out into another level of seniority, another level of management, etc. Is when you can get to the level of knowing within yourself and being identified by others in your organization as a subject matter expert. But that only speaks to the transferable skills, the things, your strengths. Do you know, have you identified what they are? Or if they're weaknesses, how can you use those other skills to enhance those weaknesses? So let's start from the beginning. What are transferable skills? And when people talk about transferable skills, they mean the skills that you acquire during your studies. So that's right now. Internships, things that you may have done in previous summers, or work experience that can be used in a variety of roles or occupation. These skills are important when you want to change your position or even industry. For example, when moving from an arts and sciences degree, which may not indicate that you're interested in financial services, but going into a financial services industry. Transferable skills takes what you've learned in arts and sciences and can articulate that to an interviewer in a financial services industry setting to let them know that you still have the skills, although you may have a much broader outlook on the world through your studies through arts and sciences. Anything to add to that, Erika?
Nope, you're right on point. It's just taking the experiences that you have and being able to demonstrate how they're relevant in other spaces. So I think you're right on.
All right. So let's talk about the benefits of transferable skills. So 3 benefits that I listed. Of course, there are more, but I wanted to really look at these 3: flexibility, diversity, portability. Flexibility, this is what allows you to perform multiple tasks in conditions of growing competition in the labor market. This can become your significant advantage. Flexible in the work environment, in the office, in the organization, because there are so many things that are important skills that companies need. And I'll give you an example. And we'll talk about it a little bit later as well. When you think about your technical capabilities, when you think about your communication abilities, when you think about the different platforms that you've used or that you even use in your personal time, flexibility in your role, meaning that you can do more than one thing. If you think about it in the light of being an athlete, you know, in football, there's a term for a player who can do a lot of things, and it's a utility player, meaning maybe he excels on offense, but he could also play defense. He's also good on special teams. He's a utility player. We can plug him in where we need him plugged in. And so that's the thing with flexibility in the workplace. The more things that you can do makes you much more valuable, even if it's speaking a foreign language. You know, you guys are in Florida. There's a lot of different languages spoken in the state of Florida, whether it's from a Caribbean, whether it's from Latin, whether it's from those coming from Europe. There are a lot of different ways. So if you're multilingual, you're very flexible in the workplace. And so that's what we mean by flexible. Erika, you want to talk about diversity for us, please?
Absolutely. When you think about transferable skills, I lost it for a second. It really allows you, once again, to be able to diversify the type of opportunities that are available to you. So I thought it was great, the example that Mark gave earlier. You may be an arts and science major, you might be a liberal arts type major, but you have an interest in financial services. The skills that you're learning, the ways in which you're gaining experience now, even in liberal arts, because a lot of times people may assume that you have to be a business major to go into a business field. But within the business space, and quite honestly, in a lot of different spaces, employers are looking for very similar type skills. Are you a thinker? Can you think logically? When you problem solve, what is the framework? What is the process by which you use to be able to think through a problem? So whether it is a research paper because you are a, let's say, psychology major and you're thinking through a particular project or a case or situation that you're working in, it's how you think that makes you valuable to an employer. So when you think about diversity, the more skills you have, the better the value to an employer. Then it opens up a variety of different types of opportunities for you. So you're not just relegated to a career in psychology. You're not just relegated to a career that's potentially non-business related, because the skills that you have are what allow you to be able to look at a variety of different types of career opportunities, roles, industries. You're not just relegated to that one particular area. So transferable skills allows you to really broaden. Understanding what your transferable skills are allows you to really diversify and think more broadly about, from a career perspective, what those opportunities may be or could be based off of your interest.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go to this last one, but I want to definitely stop long enough. Let's get a few questions or some comments or some things that you may have experienced in the Q&A or the chat. And lastly, portability. Portability just basically talks about your skills being portable, meaning you can take them from one scenario, one situation to the next. You want to always take your full tool belt, your tool kit, everything that you've learned, and keep it portable. Every skill set has a different application in different settings, but you want to never leave behind the lessons, the experiences, the skills that you've earned in other places. In your studies, you know, some of the skills that you learn is time management, deadlines, just understanding how to research and do different things of that nature. You want to bring those skills with you into your job. I know, you're looking at that finish line of graduation, and you want to get there as quick as possible, and you kind of don't want to look back after it's done, but you are gaining some very valuable skills right now that we expect you to bring or port into your first job opportunity. We get any questions or any chat yet? Not yet? Come on, guys, don't be shy. Again, you can ask us anything you want. We're going to be open and honest because we want to give you a great opportunity to learn and to utilize what we've learned in the past, regardless if it's for or with Fidelity or another organization. We want you to have the tools that you need. So when we talk about transferable skills, these are some of the ones that come top of mind. And within the realm of communication, because everyone always talks about you have to be an effective communicator, you have to know your audience, etc. But within communication, these are the skills that we're looking for. Oral skills, so being able to verbally articulate. Listening skills, very important, a lot of time overlooked. What my grandmother may have said in the past, you have two ears and one mouth for a reason, right? You should be listening twice as much as you talk. So listening skills, writing skills. I know that we're in a text era and emojis and all of that kind of thing, but writing skills, email skills, putting together sentences, being able to articulate in your writing things that you need to get across to all different levels, not just to colleagues, but even up the ladder of protocol. Nonverbal communication, that's body language. If you're on a Zoom call, we were on a call earlier today, and Erika can attest to this. My manager was giving some information, and I was smiling, and she stopped and she said, "Mark, what's funny? What are you smiling about?" And that was just the nonverbal cue that she saw on the screen, and she just asked. Discussion, and then technological communication skills. So I see we have a question. What's the question that we have?
I see here that the question is, are problem-solving skills, your process of thinking, more important than your subject matter skills?
Okay, I'll take it first, and then I'll have Erika to come in behind. And this is going to be from my personal perspective, my personal opinion. I do believe that problem-solving skills and the way that you approach it are more important than subject matter skills, or a 1A and a 1B. The reason why I say that is I come from an athletic background, and I always had coaches that says, can you process the information? How quickly can you process the information? That goes back to problem solving, the way that you think, how many times you've had that experience to not get frazzled under pressure. In business, you're going to come in contact with problems every day. And I'll take this moment to say this, and this is me putting on my career services hat. There's only one thing that an employer wants to know when you are in an interview process, okay? And I could poll you guys, and you'd probably say this or that. It wouldn't be the answer that I'm looking for. The only thing that an employer wants to know when they are interviewing you is what happens when they put you in front of a customer, okay? And if you can learn to craft your responses in these behavioral questions, tell me about a time when, or different things, to your response to that question being a customer-facing question. Fidelity, we have more than 30 million customers. We don't care if you're investing $5 or $50 million, right? We don't, and we can't stand to lose any customers, because customers are our base. And three things can happen when we train you up, prepare you, and then put you in front of a customer. Two of them are bad. There's three things that can happen. Number one, the worst of all, is that you can lose the customer, right? That's not good. Number two is the customer relationship does not grow. It stays stagnant. In business, Anything that says stagnant means that it's dying, right? So that's not good. And dying usually leads to you losing the customer. Or the customer, the relationship with the customer can grow based on who you are, the level of service that you provide, and your expertise in what that customer needs from us as a client. So problem solving. Now, financial services, you could be a customer relationship advocate. You could have a young lady to call in, spouse just died. She needs to know what to do with the money, how to transfer it maybe to children or to grandchildren, or just what to do because she just had a spouse that died, right? So you have to be able to show empathy. You have to problem solve in the moment of that, because you may not have expected that coming to work today. And this lady, you could hear in her voice, she's sad as she should be, but just to hear that I've been married 40 years and my spouse died, you have to problem solve in that moment. You have to show empathy. You have to say, you may even have to say in that moment, ma'am, I'm always here to help you. This is my direct number. If you need to take a little more time and have me call you back tomorrow, or you call me back, those are the things that we need, people that can think through in the moment, because it's more about the customer and providing world-class customer service. So yes, to your question, I believe that the problem solving, I can teach you the industry, the subject matter, because what you're going to learn in school is really all theory and books, but problem solving to me. Erika, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add, if I had to pick between the two answers, I think I would say that there's kind of it depends, but I am going, if I have to pick between the two, then absolutely how you think and how you process, because here's the reality. Most, if not all, companies are going to train you once you get there. Now, in some instances, let's say, for instance, if you're a tech person and there are certain software platforms that you need to know, Python or etc. Now, we're not going to teach you that. It's going to be very important that you can come to the table with an understanding of what some of that technical knowledge is going to be. However, it could be that the way in which you utilize it at a company like Fidelity versus another company might be slightly different, because the way Fidelity approaches the work is going to be different from other companies, right? So therefore, you have the technical knowledge. However, in the end, work, just like anything else, can be very ambiguous, right? When you come in school now, when you get a case, all the information is given to you, right? This is the situation, these are the problems, how would you solve it? In the real world, it's not going to always be that clear cut. There'll be information that you don't have. There may be decisions that you have to make and you don't have all of the information, and you're not going to get all of the information. There might be information that your manager doesn't have or that's not readily available. So you need to be able to figure out, how do I find the information that I need to be able to solve for this problem? Those are things that are not necessarily taught in school in a class. Now, do you gain those experiences and do you gain those skills by being in leadership roles and you're planning an event, and then one of your speakers decides they can't come, so now you have to figure out what you're going to do, right? That's real life. So when we're talking about our companies looking more for, when it comes to problem solving, one's ability to problem solve and think through that process, or the technical information, I lean, just like Mark, towards, we want to know how you think. Can you problem solve? Because if you can get yourself out of this situation, then that demonstrates to us you have the ability to think through all the different, or as many of the different angles in that problem as possible, and we can teach you the rest. We'll teach you how to be a customer service representative, or we'll teach you how to do a partnerships role or accounting or whatever. We'll teach you those kind of things, but can you think for yourself and problem solve for yourself? That's not something that can necessarily be taught.
And I also see that Kaylin Proctor asked a question: can these tools be geared to those who want to start their own business? Kaylin, absolutely, even more so. Starting your own business, you will need to be hyper aware of all of the skills that you've gained, all of the networking, all of the connections, and things that you learn from every experience, because now you won't have, take for instance, Fidelity was founded in 1946. So we have 4 years of brain trust of people who have years of knowledge that we can pull from. You're going to start your own business, you're going to be the brain trust, right? So you're going to need to gather all of that and keep it internally, whether you have to, use file cabinets or notes or whatever. Everything that you learn is going to be very important for you being successful as a private independent business owner. So yes, transferable skills. You're going to have to be a jack of all trades. You're going to have to be the company accountant. You're going to have to be the company IT person. You're going to have to be the company customer service person. So yes, very much so. Let's move on. So another transferable skills, and we just talked about that, analytical. The ability to solve problems is now required. It's required as an employee. Problem solving is part of analytical ability. In addition, confronted with large amounts of information daily, employees must be able to correctly interpret it. Again, how can you process information? Can I dump on you loads of information and know that you have the analytical ability to take that information, process it, and then give me an outcome that's positive, that's positive for the organization. And it's a very selfish endeavor, because the organization is only interested in things that make the organization money, that make the organization look positive. But if you go into it knowing that, then you know the part that you're getting out of it is being able to get all of the skill training, to get all of the interactions and all of the experience that may propel you to the next level of management or propel you to another position.
And I just want to jump in real quick on this one, back to analytical. I want to just highlight that there is a difference between being analytical and being quantitative, or having quantitative skills. And I find that students, particularly my folks that feel like they are not quantitative, right? When they see the word analytical, when I work with students, a lot of times they're like, well, but Erika, I'm not good with numbers. I'm not that quantitative. This job isn't for me, because it's saying they're looking for people that are analytical, and I'm not analytical. And when I dig a little deeper, what they're really thinking about is they don't feel that they have quantitative skills, okay? And if you look at the word analytical, right, the first part is anal, which means analysis. And this goes back to what Mark said. It's your ability to analyze information, whether it be quantitative or qualitative. Can you look at information? Can you take information, digest it, analyze it, and then potentially provide a recommendation or provide your thoughts around what it means? So I just kind of want to put a pin in it sometimes there, because when people think, I'll be the first to say, I was a marketing major. So, if you started talking about a lot of spreadsheets or statistical data, blah, 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 then you probably would have run me away. But that's because I confused the word analytical with the word quantitative, and they are two very different things. So I want to encourage you, when you're looking at job descriptions or you're looking at opportunities, to know that there is a difference between being analytical and being quantitative. And sometimes those words, people kind of see them as the same.
That's a very important point, especially when you're talking about the financial services industry. From the perspective of Fidelity, again, we are more based in providing world-class customer service. Now, we do have jobs that are very quantitative. We have actuary positions, we have accounting positions, we have IT technical positions that you have to be quantitative in your approach and in your skill set. But when you're dealing with customers, when you're dealing with matters of the heart, because everyone's money is attached to their heart, right? It has a lot of feelings and emotions behind how you earn money, how you spend money, how you save money. Those are the more important things for the primary part of our business. Another transferable skill is work ethic. And this is something that you guys have been building all of your life, right? From the time that your parents told you to put your toys up or you started to get chores, whether it was, cutting the grass or washing dishes or cleaning up on Saturday mornings. Work ethic is very important. And it comes down to a personal commitment and how you feel about yourself, the values that you were brought up on, or the values that you earned, whether it was, being a sacker at the grocery store or going out to get carts at Target. That's where you started to build a work ethic and the honesty and positive approach. So this is a transferable skill. You may think that was just how you were raised and that's just how you're built, but work ethic is very important, because if you get an assignment at work and it needs to be completed by a particular deadline, if it takes you staying an hour later or coming an hour earlier or staying 2 hours later or maybe getting up on Saturday morning and finishing something on your laptop, that's important. It's very important for not only those who gave you the assignment, but how it affects the rest of the business. Did I see another chat come in or something?
We did. We have another question.
Sure.
How do I realize any skills I might have? In my opinion, it's hard to look at myself and go, I'm good at this, because in my eyes, it's impossible for me to say I'm good at something when I know I can improve. Your thoughts?
Well, we're always going to be able to improve. None of us are at the level where whatever it is that we're doing, even if we're considered a subject matter expert, there's always someone else that may not necessarily do it better, but may know something in a particular part of that level of expertise. Your friends will be very critical of you. They'll do it from a place of love, hopefully. But ask your peers, ask your friends, ask an instructor. If you think you're the best student since Albert Einstein and you've got a 4.0 and you think there's nothing better you can do, ask one of your professors what they really think of your work. And are you just meeting the guidelines of what the assignment, and that's why you got an A? Or do they see something very special in you? Or where is the gap between you being special and you just doing the meeting the expectations? So ask a friend, ask a close friend. Don't ask someone who's gonna be critical in a mean way, because you that may not be good for your own, psyche. But friends and family members typically can point out things that you can do better. And it's good that you're confident and you know that there's things that you can do better. But if you got a true friend, they can certainly help in that regard.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I would add to that is, what do you enjoy doing? Right? Because we all can do a lot of different things. I can do the statistical analysis that I said that back in the day I ran from, right? I can do it. I don't enjoy doing it, so therefore I would not necessarily look for a job which would require me to do those things. But I think if you think about also, if you're a part of a club or in your classes, are there some things that come easier to you than other things, right? That may give you some insight into what some of your skills are. If you're on a team, so for instance, for me, I am a natural, I'm getting better. I'm not a black and white person anymore. I can function in the gray, but my natural tendency is going to, if there's not a process in place and, people are just things are kind of all over the place. My natural tendency is to say, okay, how can I put this in order, right? I like processes. I like order. Well, guess what? That's very valuable to a company. And if you enjoy, putting processes together or creating order out of chaos, that's a very valuable skill to a company, because once again, it goes back to how do you think, how do you process, how do you problem solve? Okay, so I think that's one thing. You can absolutely ask other people. An activity that you can do is you can ask someone to write down 5 things that they feel like you do well. And, maybe give it out to 4 or 5 different people, see where there's some overlap, They may have different things, and that will just kind of give you some insight into what some of those things are. But what I would also encourage you, once again, is what do you enjoy doing? Because I've yet to hit the lottery, so I don't know if you all are going to have more luck than me, but you might be working for a while. So it's very easy to get caught up in doing things that other people say you should do. So let's say, for instance, you are a math whiz. You don't need a calculator. You can do the calculations in your head, right? Then you probably may get feedback to say, oh, well, you should be an accountant, or, oh, you should do something that has to do with math. But if you don't enjoy that, right, you really are more of a people person. You like to be around people. You also want to take that into consideration when you're looking at opportunities, because you will be good at a lot of different things. But ultimately, when you start looking at careers, what do you really enjoy? Because if you have to do it 8 to 10 hours a day, you want to make sure that it's something you enjoy also. So think about things you enjoy, ask other people, and think about things that kind of come naturally to you know, kind of to your everyday existence within school or in your classes, or even volunteer. What do you enjoy doing volunteer-wise? What kind of positions do you hold? What kind of activities have you engaged in? And I think that can start giving you insight into what some of your skills are.
Absolutely. And we've got another here in the Q&A box that says, are your years of experience more or less important than your problem skills, subject matter knowledge combined? I'm going to say years of experience can be kind of tricky because, you know, with this audience being college students, undergrad, you could be a non-traditional student with a lot of experience, but still trying to break into an entry-level role. So I think they kind of complement and work together. And if you can articulate and show how either your lack of experience can be overcome by these transferable skills, or the breadth of your experience in lieu of not having much subject matter, I think you just have to learn how to use them together. And that's another thing that transferable skills allow you to do, is just the articulation, the communication verbally of how either the skills are your strength or prior experience. If you're like a non-traditional student, you're 27, 28 years old, you worked for several years, then you went back to school, you can say that, you know, I draw from professional experience, you know, as a 19-year-old working in this situation and coming back to school later, where I came back to get the paper, the document to say that I finished my studies. Did we have something else in chat, Brooke?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, let's move right along. Management. So regardless of the position, you are responsible for controlling your own responsibility. So this is personal management. Thus, time management and structuring of the working day have a significant impact on your productivity. You must demonstrate that you know how to set priorities correctly and are able to meet deadlines. So if this is a skill for you, if this is one of your top skills, personal management, project management, knowing how to actively coordinate all the different things that are on your plate. Sometimes, you know, people load your plate up with things that sometimes are not part of your day job, and they ask you to be on different committees, or maybe you're in a student organization that tries to take away from your time to study. This is all about that personal time management and how you approach it, being able to articulate what you have the ability to do when things start to mount up. Do you let things slide, or how do you prioritize it? Do you use the Microsoft suite of applications to send you reminders, or give you, or put things onto a calendar, or use different whether it's you know, an iOS application that helps you to prioritize?
Yeah, I want to jump in on this one, and I'll just make mention of the one before around work ethic. I think there are some skills that are very tangible in nature and some that are more intangible in nature, right? So when we're talking about work ethic, that is something you can see, right? That's just kind of who you are, how you approach your work, that kind of thing. When it comes to management, personal management, in the way that he's talking about here, we're talking about your ability to manage your time, to structure your day, to be productive in things that you're doing. These are the things within the workforce. When I say intangible, so for instance, showing up late, that's clearly obvious. Or let's say this, if you're supposed to be at work at 9 o'clock and you consistently get there at 9:03, 9:05, right? That's going to go, that can speak to your work ethic, that can speak to your ability to manage your time. Your manager or your teammates or whomever may not necessarily say anything to you directly about that. However, it could be something that they're taking note of. Hence, when it's time for salary increases or promotions or that kind of thing, may not bring it up until maybe your performance evaluation. So hence, these kind of things where you kind of have to self-manage may not come up until much later. And now you've kind of created a brand for yourself that you're always going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes late for a meeting. So really understanding that some of these transferable skills, or these skills in general, are ones that you are going to have to self-manage, because this presentation isn't about your brand, right? But we all have a brand on campus, in our personal lives, in our work lives, and the way in which we manage our time, the way in which we approach our work can all impact our brand and how people perceive who we are and what we bring to the table. So you want to make sure that you manage that also. The other thing that I see a lot of times with students, and it goes back to this personal management, Mark talked about making sure you have some type of calendar or something so you can keep up with everything. Sometimes though, you may just have to say you don't have the capacity to do anything else, right? I love my undergrad students. You all tend to be overachievers and you want to do everything, and you're doing more than me. I have a 5-year-old son and I feel like I'm busy all the time, but somehow or another you all can kind of cram even more stuff on your plate. It is okay to pass on opportunities or certain things at times. That goes back to the prioritization that Mark was talking about. And if you're in the workspace, it's okay to share with your manager what you have on your plate if they're trying to give you more, and ask them to help you to prioritize so that you don't have so many balls up in the air that 1 drops, then 2 drops, and then 3 drops, and then we have a big mess. So back to the whole time management and structuring of your day, sometimes it may require you to just say no. Now, we may not say it that way, but sometimes it will require you to say no, or not at this time, or kind of giving some parameters around when you will be able to get to said assignment or said request. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there too.
Alrighty. Let's see here. And then leadership. So this is another transferable skill. It is often confused with management, but these are actually different skills. Management is about efficiency, but leadership is about inspiration. Leadership does not depend on position or age. It is what you have inside. So groups that you are a part of, student organizations, you definitely in interviews, you want to talk about your leadership, the position that you held, projects that you may have worked on, what was your part in the project, what was the outcome of the project. But leadership, like it says, is about inspiration. How can you work together to make a team better? What skills do you use to collaborate on teams? Are you the type of person who, as a leader, likes to roll up your sleeves and work along with people? Or do you just like to lead from out front and kind of as an authority position? These are the different transferable skills. And whichever one you choose, you have to be able to articulate how that inspires other people to work to come to the common goal. And let's see, I think I have one more. Computer and technical skills. Goes without saying, every organization has so many different elements of computer and technical skills. I like to tell students, if you're a junior or sophomore and you have some electives left, in your degree plan. And this is the caveat: do not go out and take a 4,000 or 5,000 level course. Take an entry level course and learn some coding, learn some data analytics. Take some of those classes, the entry level. When I say the entry level classes, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 classes, and see if that's something that you can add to the degree that you're getting. Because technical skills, coding, data analytics, business analytics, they're not going away. They're only going to get more important in every role. And the more that you have internally as a skill set, technically, is going to put you in a much better position with any job that you will have in the future. Let's see, I think we have, here's a question. How can you prove that you inspire others as a leader? How do you articulate that into a portfolio? Well, tell me more about the portfolio, but again, if you are part of a student organization, if you had a project in class and you had a special job within that delegation of what was needed to make the outcome be positive, or you can just talk about how you approach teamwork. And you can inspire as an individual contributor, right? But that's still leadership. If I don't have to be the leader to inspire others, but my inspiration to others can make sure that the project ends in a positive way. And not only that, it also helps me to be prepared for when I will be the leader out front. Again, a lot of the information that people are trying to get out of you in an interview or in a professional setting is that you have the maturity to know what to do. A manager may come to you knowing that they're going to have opportunity in 6 months or 8 months or 9 months, and they want to come to you to kind of see where you're at, if you're prepared, without you even knowing, and just to ask you a few questions to see where your professional level of maturity is and how you approach things. So that could be one of those cases where they see you have a potential for leadership, and they're just trying to figure out if it's something that they want to go out on a limb to tell other people that you're ready.
Yeah, and I'll also add to that when it comes to leadership, I mean, I think in real life, in a real interview, we're kind of talking about these high level. There are different types of questions that people will ask to try and pull that out, right? So they could just ask the question, tell me about a time when you led a team, what was the result of your leadership, right? So in this instance, they're talking more about most likely a leadership position that you held, and how did you work with that team? How did you inspire that team? How did you get from whatever the example is that you want to give about a project or how you led that team to what the outcome is? But you also might get questions where they'll say, okay, well, tell me about a time you led a team and things didn't go as planned, or you had people on the team that didn't work well together, right? Or they may say, tell me about a time when you worked with a disgruntled classmate, colleague, client, et cetera, et cetera. These are all examples where you will be able to talk about how you motivated someone. Or they may ask you, tell me about a time when you motivated someone to do something they didn't want to do, right? Now, they're not asking you, tell me about a time you led a team, but what they are asking you about is how did you kind of motivate, how did you influence, how did you move a person or a team from one spot to the other? So I think a lot of these questions that you all have in the context of an interview, people are going to ask a variety of different types of questions to get to your comfort in working with large amounts of data to make a decision. They're going to ask questions about how do you work on a team? What do you see your role to be? How would other people describe you as a teammate? So those are all going to be opportunities for you to really talk about experiences or times in which you utilize these skills. So I don't know if that kind of makes it more real life, you know, from the standpoint of how it happens. But in talking about leadership specifically, there are typically lots of different questions or questions that will be asked where you will be able to really highlight how you operate, whether you're the leader or someone that's a part of the team that kind of stepped up to the plate to show some initiative or show your ability to move a team, although you didn't have the positional authority as the leader of the team.
I'm gonna jump into some of these questions I see in the Q&A. Do you need data analytics skills if you're starting a business as an artist? If you're starting a business, I don't care what it's in, dog walking or as an artist, yes, you're gonna need some data analytics skills, whether it's gonna to give yourself a presence, a web presence, whether it's gonna be to do marketing or to get more customers. Yes, data analytics are supremely important to any business today. So yes, if you can take entry level, remember I said entry level, don't go and get the 4,000 or 5,000 level course. Get the entry level course and see just how effective having those skills are. How do I show on my resume, my transferable skills, and how I have demonstrated these skills? Erika, you want to take that one?
Absolutely. So the way I encourage students to look at their resume, let's say, for instance, you're interested in a customer service type role, right? Let's just use that one, customer service or a customer relationship advocate rep kind of role. First thing you want to do, even when you're putting together your resume, is you want to have an understanding of what is the employer looking for? What kind of skills are they looking for? So if you read the job description or you're talking to someone or you see on their website, they say, we're looking for people that have customer service skills, sales skills, strong communication and written skills. Let's just use those. Then when you start putting together your resume, you want to think about what skills or what experiences do you have when it comes to maybe drafting a business plan. Maybe you did it in your class, you drafted some type of business plan, or if it's presentation, you want to talk about examples of when you presented to, you know, your classmates or to leadership or to professors or whatever, or to an audience. You did a training session and so you were able to present it. Right, so first thing you want to do is look at the job, do some research on the company, the type of role that you're interested in, see what they're looking for, and then you want to try and align the skills that you have, the transferable skills. Maybe you've never done it the way they're asking in the job description, but you have done it in this way. Maybe you've never presented to 100 people, but you presented to 10 people, right? So you want to show that my ability to present, whether it's 10 people, if I can present to 10, I can present to 100. Okay, so that's the first thing that you want to do. And then if it's done well, me as a recruiter or Mark as a recruiter will be looking for the words. And sometimes it's just in the language. If they're looking for leadership, then you may start off one of your bullets to say, led a team of XYZ. If they're looking for people that have strong written skills, drafted a white paper. So that when we're looking at your resume, the transferable skills are just going to pop because we're seeing the words that say, oh, okay, they have leadership. Okay, they've written a white paper. They've done X, Y, Z. So the transferable skills and identification comes from me as the recruiter reading your resume to see, am I seeing some of the skills that I'm looking for?
Exactly. So we're getting close to the end. I'm just answering one of these in the Q&A. Any other questions? Brooke, anything to add? We have a few more minutes. We can take some more questions, but Brooke, anything to add on anything we've shared today?
No, I just wanted to, there was one last question in the chat. We can go ahead and address that before we close. And then I will do our closing remarks.
Okay, what's the last one that we have?
It says, what does management stand for in the business industries?
What does management stand for in the business industries? And do you mean that in regards to what we had on one of the slides, or do you just mean in general? And you were talking about business as an industry.
And if the person is still in the room who posted the question, if you'd like to, they are letting me know what the meaning was. Okay, so what does the meaning of management stand for in the business industry?
The meaning of management.
Well, I'm looking at, I don't know if this is from the same person. What does management stand for the business? So I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
Management is a very broad term, right? So management could, depending on if it is a, a noun, management could be senior leadership, right? So it really is going to depend on the context, because it's from the same person. Okay. It's so broad. Management also, let's put the word project in front of management, project management. That means you're responsible for managing a project, most likely from beginning to end. So from when, you're coming up with ideas for, or you're working with a group of people on, I'll use this example. I had to create a newsletter for the company that I worked for. So I had to manage that project, right? The newsletter. So it started at, okay, what is the timeline for the delivery of this newsletter, right? So I have to figure out if we want it to go out at the end of the month, then I need to back it up and I need to create a timeline for that. Then I need to figure out, okay, what people do I need to reach out to be able to provide me the content that I need? And by what date do I need to ensure that they have that information for me, right? Then I need to understand, I have to work with my vendors to make sure it gets printed. And then I have to work to make sure that it is distributed to everyone that it's supposed to be distributed to. So that's a very simplified version, but project management is really taking a project, and that's putting project in front of management from beginning to end. Sales management could be you manage a sales force and you have to work with your sales force to ensure that they're meeting their numbers or their goals. So it's a very broad term, but I think in the end, it's about managing the process by which something gets done if we're using it as a verb.
But I see one that says, is it always advisable to reach out to people that you know that are established already in the business in your field, ask them experience and start? Absolutely. You can't get enough, you can't take in enough information when it comes to preparing yourself for something that you're interested in. Again, those of us who have already experienced it and gone through it, we paid the price for it. No need for you to pay for it a second time. If we can give you some of the answers that will help you on your journey. So yes.
And that's called networking, right? Absolutely. You should be doing that anyway. The more people you know, those types of individuals will help to open doors, whether it's providing information, whether it's providing education, or whether it's saying, hey, Erika, I'm really interested in this job at Fidelity. Can we sit down and talk? And I determine you're a great candidate. And then I reach out to Mark and say, hey, Mark, I know you had this job. I had this incredible candidate. Why don't you take a look, right? So that's networking. That's something you should be doing.
Anyway. Okay, last two. What are some entry-level courses or topics you would recommend for starting your own business? Can't go wrong if you're not a marketing student to understand marketing principles, data analytics. You might want to take an entry-level accounting. I mean, your accounting, your money and knowing what to do with it or how to represent it is going to be very important. So if you're starting a business, just about everything is going to be something that you need to put on your plate, just so you have a basic knowledge or know some other people that can help you with that information. Yeah. And lastly, how do you get to know people established in your field? So professional organizations are big. For example, if you're in human resources, there's a group called SHRM, S-H-R-M. They usually have a local campus chapter. They have a metro, and it's usually less expensive to join as a student. But they have their own website, they have their own jobs, they have their own committees and people that you can get in touch with. So most fields, most industries have an established organization, whether student or professional or both, that you can join. All you have to do is just look it up. Even like marketing, they have the American Marketing Association. They have, for science, they have all these different organizations. So just check into it to see what's kind of the governing body for the field that you're interested in.
And I would also say LinkedIn. You're probably, if you're not on LinkedIn, I encourage you to create a LinkedIn and start getting connected with people, but you're probably connected with people who know people in fields or industries or doing roles that you're interested in, and you can reach out to them that way too, or ask people to make introductions.
And connect with Erika and myself as well. Well, thank you, Brooke, for allowing us to come and share a little bit today. As always, we're always happy and available to do so, but thank you to the students for taking the time. Great questions. And again, get with us on LinkedIn and we'll be happy to continue our networking relationship going forward.
Yes, thank you so much, Mark and Erika, for speaking with us today. And many thanks to all of our attendees and all those wonderful questions. We really appreciate your engagement. Just keep in mind, all attendees will receive an email with a session survey link included, and we'd really appreciate your feedback on this session. Please feel free to check out our other professional use sessions. And on that note, have a great day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.